Welcome to the Journey Through Homeschooling podcast, practical support for every step of your homeschool adventure. I'm Jami Thornsberry.
And I'm Adonna Pryor.
Adonna, today we are wrapping up our series on the intersection of motherhood and homeschooling as we talk about motherhood and homeschooling in the high school years. I think, as we look at our own journeys and as we talk to parents who are coming into the high school time of life, what would you say are the biggest concerns that parents have?
Probably graduation, leading up to graduation, and record keeping. Is my child going to make it? With me teaching them is a huge deal, right? You're concerned that your child's not going to be able to graduate, not succeed in life because you don't understand some particular high school class. You're concerned that they wouldn't get into a college because they're homeschooled. You're worried that they may not be able to pass the ACT or, be able to do what they want to do. So it's a really stressful time for them, and it's a really stressful time for us. We start to panic, and we start to see that here's this child that could that's growing up very quickly and is potentially leaving the house. Maybe they're going to leave and go to college. Maybe they're going to start dating. They're going to have a serious, relationship. And how are we going to handle that? And have we prepared them correctly? Have we given them everything, all of our wisdom? You start to panic that you've missed out on something.
Yeah. What are some of the relational concerns that we see or hear a lot in this time from parents? Because, we do oftentimes, for those of you guys listening, you may think, it's all about homeschooling. And I think we've said it before in this series that the foundation of every homeschool is the relationship, right? It's the parent-child relationship, the sibling relationships, all those things. And so, quite frankly, we hear a lot of relational questions, a lot of relational concerns. What comes to your mind that we hear probably the most, or maybe the most?
That the child isn't listening to the parent. That they're not hearing what the parent is telling them. They're not obeying what the parent wants them to, the rules the parent may want them to follow. That seems like it's the most basic thing. But there's that constant struggle of an adult who has lived and has experienced life versus an upcoming adult who really is chomping at the bit, who really wants to get out and experience life. And there's that concern of a mother and a father who are trying to hold back as long as possible because the hurt that's there.
Yeah.
The potential hurt that's there, right? Of all of the dangers. You've read them. You see them in the news every single day. So you're aware of what potentially could happen. And that's very scary because there's no way to fix a lot of these things. So you want to protect them from harm, while at the same time, you also want them to live the life that the Lord has set before them. And it's really, really difficult because they don't always see. Well, I would say they rarely see what the potential dangers could be. Or at least they see them. They just don't believe it's ever going to occur in their sphere of friends, right?
Yeah.
My group of friends isn't going to do that. It's the same attitude where a lot of parents would look at a school system and say, I don't need to homeschool my child because my school isn't the problem. It's that school that's across town, or it's those schools in that other county or that other state or those other places, but it's never where I am. And we sometimes are blind to the faults that are right around our home. It's scary for parents because we've seen it, right?
Yeah.
We've lived through it and we're afraid. So there is that huge butting of heads between this child that is struggling to figure out how to be an adult. They want to be. They know they're not. It's frustrating for them that they believe that they can handle a lot of stuff, but they're not given the right or the opportunity to handle stuff. And rightly so. There are many things they shouldn't be handling, but it's really frustrating for them. And then it becomes frustrating for us because they want to try more things and they want to experience more things.
And of course, the further along in the high school career that they get, the brighter that light at the end of the tunnel becomes, and it kind of feeds some of that. Yeah. So how did you and Jeff navigate this? 4 kids, 4 very different kids,
right?
Each at different times, right? Different personalities. How did you guys navigate the high school years?
The high school years, as far as schooling, was easier because by that time, all of them were reading, and they were reading to the point where you could give them an assignment. You could say, look, here's your books. This is what you need to get done by the end of the week or by the end of the month. And everybody understood, what we had to do. And
so they were able to manage their time.
All of that was pretty easy, and they chose how to manage their time in different ways. Some of them wanted to sleep a little bit later. Some of them wanted to get up really early. Some of them wanted to work to earn some money to get things. Some of them would have, I want maybe a little tiny work here and a little tiny work there, would rather work for a family member instead of looking for a job elsewhere. So they were very different in how they did that. And all of that, I let them kind of more or less organize. They could, what jobs you have to do. Well, we would investigate that with them and figure out what would be a good fit. But their schooling, they really just had to have it done at a certain time at the end of the week or a couple of weeks. Here you all need to get this particular book finished by the end of the month. That's when we're going to move on to this book here. For a couple of them, they had one online class, and that kept them going at a particular pace for that particular class that they were taking. We did geometry. There was a geometry class that they did online. There was a chemistry class that they did online. So those kind of kept them going at a particular pace in that. Relationship-wise was really the struggle. Mainly because one of my children is exactly like me in the way that she processes information and the way that she thinks. So we butted heads a lot. And that was really difficult for me, living with my own words, with my own way of thinking, with my own process of logic. That was difficult because she made a lot of sense to me. It was very reasonable that we do this, and I really didn't have any arguments for why we couldn't be going this route, right? So there were things that, ideas that she had or things that she wanted to do, and I would just say, okay, you can't go by yourself. None of your other siblings are old enough to do that, so I'm going to go with you. And that was fine. We just worked it out that I went with her to some things that she really wanted to go to. They were out of town functions, and I just went along with her and did some of those things. And I learned a lot about her. I think she learned a lot about herself.
Oh, that's good, because I was going to ask you one of the questions that was burning in my mind was what did you learn through that? How did that change you?
Well, I think that part of the panic went away. There was one particular trip that we took to Atlanta, and because of the event we went to and because of the just what was going on at the time, she was very irritated and upset on the way home. And my first instinct would have been to push the subject, right? Why has this upset you? Tell me what's going on. Tell me what's going on. But the Lord just kept saying, no, just let her think about it. Let her work through. And at the end of the trip, because it's, to Atlanta, that's several hours. for us. Before we got home, I realized that what upset her, and she said this, was that she had been praying about and for this particular person that we had gone to hear. And this person was not living in a way that would be an example for Christian young people. And her little heart was just crushed. And I did not know that that's what she was doing. I didn't know that she was praying diligently every day for this person. And here we are. And she's not upset about anything else that, that's going on at the event. She's upset that this person whom she's prayed for
right,
is essentially living their life without knowing God and getting further and further away from the God that she loved. So it was lovely to see that. I really enjoyed it. But had I pushed, I would have made her more upset in the situation and not let her, calm down and just be in a place where she was able to talk about this very personal thing that she's praying for someone.
Yeah. And
right?
I think, as if you would have pushed, you would have missed that opportunity to really see her heart.
Right, exactly. Yes.
And I will say, thinking about reflecting that to our situation, to our time with, our son in high school, there were so many times where he wanted to do something or a situation happened or whatever. And in my flesh, in the very moment, everything in me was screaming, no, no, no. Right. But the Holy Spirit, thankfully, I would just hear this faint, just step back a bit, just step back a bit, just wait. And every time I was able to have self-control and trust the Lord and step back a bit, we saw some of the most beautiful pictures, or however you want to say that, parts of our child's heart, rather than jumping in with our own experience and our own preconceived ideas of what was happening. We were able to let truth rise to the top and see these beautiful glimpses of the person that he was becoming.
Yeah, I loved the part of those mid to late teen years when they would experience something, that's hurtful to them, or that is an unusual event. They hadn't really witnessed this, something happen, maybe something happening to a friend that's very hurtful to a friend, and come to you and explain it to you, and you're able to point out the blessings that the Lord has. I remember one particular incident where there was this person, and one of my kids was really good friends with them, and this person acted in a way that was extremely harmful and dangerous while they were at an event in town. And, my child came to me and said, can you believe that this is what happened? Can you believe that, this person I know has done this? And I remember saying, you know what? You don't often get great big signs from God saying, hey, be careful. But you've gotten a great big sign from God. He's dropped it right down, and he is saying you need to be cautious with this relationship. I said, well, you don't always get that, but you have been blessed. And this is a really good time for you to kind of step back and evaluate what's going on here. Is this a person that you want to take forward in the rest of your life? Is this somebody that you really want to get to know better? So there were a lot of those little bitty moments in time where you could see their brains moving out of that, like that protective zone that you've always kept them in, and walking outside. Not that not that they're going to a dangerous function. Maybe this is youth group. Maybe this is choir. Maybe this is a field trip with some other friends. But all of a sudden they see something that they're not comfortable with. And then they come to you and say, this is what happened. What do you think about it?
Yeah.
And it really was beautiful to see that their alarm bell was going off at the same kind of thing that you would have thought, this is not a good situation. Or maybe even there were a lot of times where I would say, oh, let's go over there and let's do, let's have lunch with them. They seem like a really great crowd. And one of my kids would say, Mom, I'm not sure that they're the right family for us to hang out with. You'd be, what? What do you mean? I love their mom. She's fabulous. And the kids are like, yeah, Mom, but these kids are no good. What? Really? So all of a sudden you had to look at it and trust what they were saying to you. Instead of me being the person leading and saying, this is the safe space. I now was opening up to the fact that my kids were also able to observe people who they didn't feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I had to learn how to respect that.
Yeah.
If they didn't feel comfortable hanging out with this person, even though I thought this was perfectly fabulous. Yeah. I really get along with this woman. Let's go have lunch. Even though that was something I was anxious to do and make a new friend, they were like, yeah, no, I'm not, I don't feel easy with this kid. So I had to start paying attention to that. And every single time they were absolutely right.
Yeah.
Every single time. So that all of these kind of transitions into adulthood were a lot of lessons for me on how to stand back and trust that the Holy Spirit was doing for them what he says he's going to do. He says, I'm their holy father, I'm their father. I've got this. I'm their comforter. I'm their savior. I've got this. We're still working in tandem here. Don't let go, but
right.
I'm working here too. I'm working. They're with me. I've got this. Pay attention to what's going on. Understand that I'm working here. So I had to learn how to not be that. I don't think I was ever a helicopter parent, but was very, very cautious.
It's always tempting. I think every mother is tempted, right?
I was extremely cautious. I did let them get into their own little dangers, but I was very cautious, especially when it came to interacting with other people. I didn't want us to form a ton of friends and then get into a trap where we're friends with someone who now we can't remove ourselves from that situation. So I was really careful about bringing new people in, but they were really good about recognizing situations before they would happen.
Yeah,
I loved that, but for me it was a process of trusting them. Trust that the Holy Spirit is actually working in their lives, just like he's working in yours, and that they have wisdom that they're going to offer. So that was a difficult relationship barrier, and I failed it a lot of times. There were a lot of times where I go, no, I'm sure they're fine. I'm sure this is going to be absolutely fine.
Yeah.
And I know I've told you this many times, but my discernment is not always the best. It is not always at the top notch. And I tend to notice problems with my surrounding as soon as I fall into a ditch, and then I go, oh, look, there's the ditch. So it was difficult for me at first to really trust what they were saying, their wisdom and their discernment in those areas. And I do have a couple kids that are much better at that than I am at this point.
Yeah, me too. And I think some of it is we come into the middle school and high school years with a lot of information from the world. Mm-hmm. Telling us that, those years are going to look a certain way, kids are doing certain things. And I'm not denying that those things exist, or that our kids can't, make a mistake and get involved in those things. But I think there are some cornerstones that you seem to lay out very early, that no matter where your kid lands, if you see them, making bad decisions that are going to, hurt them for the rest of their life. One of those being open communication, them being able to come to you and tell you anything, without fear that, you're not going to love them anymore, or, of course they know that there's going to be some kind of, consequence if it's something that is not appropriate. But that open communication, I think, in high school is so, foundational, because, like you said, they are more independent. Our kids, especially nowadays, kids are so much more independent. They have their own cell phones, they have their own cars, they have access to their friends and all kinds of things all the time. And if you've not established that ability for them to come to you when something's happened, no matter what it is, that they can come to you and tell you and know that they're going to be safe. And they're going to, the first thing, the foundation of it all is going to be love, then you're going to have a really hard time of it. And, I do have friends who, homeschooled all the way through and had some of those moments where that communication shut down for whatever reason within their family. And they had some pretty hard times to walk through because they found out things, from other people, or more publicly, so to speak. And that's really hard. So I think, especially as we're talking about like where motherhood and homeschool intersects is, and we've talked about this from the middle school and the elementary, is keeping those lines of communication open with our kids and giving them that safe space to come talk about what's on their heart, and it's funny because, my daughter's in middle school, and she'll always, not always, but oftentimes when she thinks I'm going to respond a certain way, she will come and say, I need to ask you something, or I need to tell you something, but I don't want you to say anything until I'm all done. And I'm like, okay, have the floor, and part of that is because she's coming with an expectation of the answer that she's going to get. And, I do try really hard to make sure that my kids know that no matter what they come and tell me or ask me, the heart of the response is going to come from a loving response. And I think especially in those high school years, it's just really important to have that open communication and the ability to listen and learn from your kids, especially in high school. I mean, good gracious, our kids are learning so much outside of us, that I love the approach that you took, that you're like, nope, I'm going to go with you. I want to keep you safe. You're free to go and, do it as, you want to plan it, but we're going to do this together. And you learn so much, especially about your high schoolers. It doesn't mean you're going to be at every, thing they go to by any means, but trying to maintain a way to stay in their world a little bit. So who they are and you get those glimpses, I think is really important as well. We did that with our son right before he left. We went on a trip with him to a school that he wanted to attend after high school. And so it was just us. We left our daughter home with family members, and me, my husband, and my son went off for, I don't know, I think it was 4 days. And to see him in this place around, because he had already known several people that were at that school, to see him in that place, in a place that ignited his passion, that he was very passionate about, that he wanted to be, and around people his own age and doing things that he wanted to do while kind of being on the sidelines, was a real joy. And it gave us the confidence in him that he was going to be okay, when he left our house. And so I think, having those open lines of communication, staying involved in appropriate places where you can, see all that you've planted. Because, I've said it 100 times. High school is the time when you see the fruit of all your labors. You begin to see it one way or another, right? For good or for bad, you're going to see all the things that you've planted in, either intentionally or unintentionally, come out of your kids. And sometimes, the things that we've planted are not...
It's not where we want to go.
Not really where we wanted to go. And so you've got to back up and rework on some things, but other things can be really beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. It's a nice time to reap those rewards and to also sit back and enjoy them. It's not really a time when you're doing a lot of discipline.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a time when you're setting boundaries.
Yes.
And expecting them to respect your boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it really is a transition into them learning how to set their own boundaries in life, mm-hmm. and how to demand respect from other people around them. So it can be emotionally more challenging. The younger years are physically challenging. Mm-hmm. They're exhausting. And the high school years are emotionally challenging.
For sure.
You're dealing with someone who is, for the most part, making sense in their reasoning why though your boundaries may not work for them or why they might need to be changed. And many times you have to defend that. You're going to have a reason why your boundaries are there. And because I said so doesn't always work, right?
Yep.
So it really is vital. As Jami was talking, I thought, how vital it was that my husband and I were on the same page of the playbook, as he would say, that he was there to support the things that I was saying, or if he didn't support it, he wasn't making fun of me or saying, no, you don't need to listen to Mom. He was saying, oh, well, maybe we could try this. He was talking to me in a respectful manner, and he was saying, maybe we can try something different. Even though the child may be there listening, they were saying, okay, how do parents communicate with this? So he was being respectful of the things that I was saying, and he wasn't coming against me. I wasn't coming against him. So his support was, I could not have raised these kids without him at all, especially that emotional time in the high school years. I could not have done it.
Yeah.
He was a real calming force, but at the same time, I will tell you, I learned an extremely valuable lesson when my boys were both teenagers, larger than me, looking like men, and they had an argument between the two of them. And I really was like, hey, it's, treating it like it was nothing. And I wasn't paying attention to what they were saying to each other. I was just like, boys, men, whatever, testosterone. And I remember just the air changing, and my husband stood up from his chair and walked over and intervened between the two of them. And after about 60 seconds of him talking to them, both of these very large pre-adult males were in tears. And I thought, he picked up on something in the male character that needed to be stopped and corrected that I never got. I didn't see it. I didn't think this was an important conversation.
Yeah.
I was totally ignoring it. And he picked up on something that he was like, nope, this isn't going to happen. And I'm stopping it. And I'm stopping it by standing up, by becoming a physical presence. They're both large. I'm going to be bigger than they are. And I'm going to come in between them, and we're going to have this physical confrontation. And they're going to pay attention and be respectful. It was an amazing thing, because I remember one being shocked that he was responding with such vehemence. He was very upset that they had whatever. I to this day have no clue what happened. So ignorant of what was going on was I. But he responded with vehemence and was like, nope, this isn't where we're going. And I thought, wow, if it had just been me, I would never have realized that this was escalating or this was at a point where that needed to be stopped. I would not have, I would not have seen it. But here's Dad. His part is, I'm going to rein in these guys. They need to know that this is not how a man acts, and it's not how he acts towards his brother. And I was so thankful in that moment that he was there to do that. And I thought, this is an opportunity I would never have seen if I had been by myself. He exclusively knows exactly how to train those men to be godly men.
Yeah.
And I was so thankful I had him in that moment. I know this is mostly women hearing this, but wow, dads, so important for those high school years, those teen years for any of your sons, any of your boys. They don't always have to be connected. You don't always have to have, kumbaya moments where we're out throwing a football, but it is vital for him to be there and for him to be hearing those conversations.
Yeah, for sure. Dads play such an important role
Yep.
In children's lives at every age and stage, right? Both male and female. And there are things that, dads can speak into so much more succinctly and so much better than we as moms can. And especially in those high school years, like for boys, I was thinking along that lines as well that, that's when my son really started going to Dad for more wisdom, more conversation. And I remember someone coming to me and asking if that bothered me, as a homeschool mom, because I had such influence, in those younger years. Not that my husband didn't, but of course he's, at work all day.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, no, absolutely not. That is who he should be going to.
Yes.
His dad's got a lot of wisdom for him, wisdom that I don't have because, quite frankly, I'm not a guy. And he needs that. He needs that, biblical solid foundation that he can go to his dad and talk to him about things that, he can't come and talk to me about. And, conversely, my daughter will probably have things that she'll never be able to talk to Dad about either.
Right.
But she'll come to me about. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And, it just goes to the way that God set up the family. And, we do have a lot of single moms now who are homeschooling, which is amazing.
It is.
I know a couple of single moms who work full time and homeschool multiple children. And they are absolute heroes. And I also know several of those moms have sought out, kind of like a father figure for their sons so that they can have that input. And I think that's so important because they understand that there are things that only another man can give to their son in the way of wisdom, in the way he needs to, rear his family coming up and those sorts of things. And I love that. I love the idea that you pulled out and the truth that you pulled out that, it's so important for us to be on the same page as husband and wife. And, I know we've had several conversations with moms who their kids are in the younger years. And, they talk about the fact of not being on the same page at this point. And, one of our biggest pieces of advice is figure out how to get on the same page before you hit middle school and high school, because it amplifies at that point.
Yeah. And they're quite frankly smart enough to know how to manipulate that. Children are so much smarter than we ever give them credit for, and they will be able to find a way to use your differences, your arguments, your personalities, to their benefit. So you need to always make sure that those boundaries are clear again. So I love that. One of the things that we've more recently come to enjoy, and that is at least once a week. Usually it ends up being once a week, sometimes twice. We always sit around our great big table and have a meal, the nice plates, the nice forks, the cups, the pretty cups. And we sit around and we have our nice meal. and then we can hang out and talk. And we usually are sitting there for an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and just chatting with one another.
Yeah.
It ends up being a good time. Now, when your kids are little, that's not always a good time. You have, I've had my lovely meal ruined by child taking a bite of peas and going yuck and throwing up all over the middle of the beautifully set table. So, 2-year-olds aren't really working for that. Kids in high chairs don't always work for that. You're really, as a mom to a little, you are so busy at mealtime just making sure people aren't feeding the dog their liver that you don't have time to really enjoy it. And the high school years give you that opportunity to have a little bit more of a formal setting. It doesn't have to be fancy, but you're able to sit down and have a meal and kind of just relax and say, hey, how was your day?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would say to that is, if you're a mom who's listening and you're still in those young years of, toddlers and elementary, and, life is really, really busy, that is indicative of that season. Mm-hmm. However, I would encourage you, if you don't have a set family meal time, at least once, twice a week, man, start that in those elementary and those little years. I remember, my son was probably in 7th or 8th grade when he realized that most families in America do not sit down and have dinner together. And he was shocked because we always made it a point to have dinner together as often as possible, not just with, our immediate family, but even with our extended family, because we're blessed to have them in the area. And, he realized in that moment how valuable that was. And I tell you that when they're grown and gone and they come back and choose to sit at that table with you,
yes,
it's even more of a blessing. And as a mom, that intersection it's one of the most amazing things to sit down with your grown children and have them choose to be at that table with you because you've made a point to do that throughout their lives.
Yeah. And also, I think for moms that have that mixture, right? They've got kids that are little, they've got kids in the middle years, they've got kids in the high school years. Try and make time that they are, the older kids have time when they're not bombarded with all the littles chores. They're not having to watch a young child. They're not having to be responsible for someone else's school or someone else's, chores. Make sure that they know that they have time that's just allotted to them.
Yeah.
They've got their own private time. Every single one of them is going to be just as diverse as every single adult, and all of our friends that we know. They're going to be some of our high schoolers that are very outgoing. They love to help. They love to hang out with people. They love to talk to their friends. They're going to be some of them that really need downtime, that need a quiet space on a daily basis or a weekly basis, need to have a bit of quiet. If you know that you've got one of those kids, please make time for all of your kids, even the ones who chat, because if they need it, then they can take quiet. If they don't, they can choose not to. But make sure that they understand you're respecting their time, and that you are not requiring those older kids to constantly help you manage the house and help you manage the children. It does, I think, if we involve them 100% of the time in that, it does build bitterness in them.
Yeah.
So I would make sure they understand that they've got their own time, that they can go out with friends, that they can spend time with some of their older siblings or with you even, but they're not required to do what essentially is your job and your husband's job, that they do have a downtime for them. I really think it's important for you to set aside just a bit of quiet for them.
Yeah, for sure. Because, like you said, it can breed bitterness in their hearts. And that's definitely not what we want to do as moms. Yeah. And, it just reminds me of the blessing of Charlotte Mason, reminding us that our children are, full human, before they're the age of 25, as well as after the age of 25, and respecting how they're created, because God created them that way for a purpose. And so, any parting words, Adonna? Any wisdom in the high school years?
I would say enjoy as much as you possibly can. Be in prayer for them and their wisdom, and make sure they know that the Lord says if you ask for wisdom, He'll give it to you. Make sure that you tell them, hey, pray for wisdom, pray for your own wisdom. So be praying for them every single day, and find something, especially in this season, find something to thank them for. Make sure that you are very thankful to them when they help you, that you are remembering to thank them when they do the laundry or they do the dishes or they help with a chore. Make sure that you are expressing that respect and treating them like you would other adults who may, if someone else was in your house, that you're saying thank you and please, and you're treating them with an increased amount of respect.
Yeah,
so that
gratitude is really important, I think.
Yeah. I do think that they see that and they need it. They need to know that what they're doing is valuable. They need to know that what they're doing is appreciated.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that goes a long way to just strengthening, again, that bond. And I would say for parting words, very much what you said, like enjoy this time, because it will be very short. You'll be surprised at how short it is. And at the same time, really try to get to know your child for who they really are. That, I think, is one of the greatest blessings of those high school years, is you're really seeing their character, their passions, their desires come to the forefront, that oftentimes will be with them for life. And so getting to know them during this time, I think, is really important. And like we said from the very beginning, keeping that open communication, not necessarily being the one who, in high school, trying to impart your experience and your wisdom all the time, but stepping back and listening, keeping that line of communication open where they can talk to you. And then when you have the opportunity, speak, but reservedly, I think, in some instances, your wisdom, so that they have the opportunity to learn to process and learn to, like you said, pray for their own wisdom. I found asking a lot of questions in conversation in the high school years was very beneficial.
Yes.
So ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to take time. I know it can take a lot of time, but they need that. And those will be the things that anchor them, when they're launched in just a couple of years. So thank you for listening to the Journey Through Homeschooling podcast, as we've been talking about the intersection of motherhood and homeschooling. We hope that you will join us again next week as we start something new. We'll see what that is. Have a great week.